Hi everyone, Matt here from WorkStory, here to give you a quick walkthrough of the WorkStory platform and process so you can get a better sense of how things might work for your own teams. So as a quick overview of the WorkStory ethos, basically everything we do is centered around the concept of traditional performance reviews being broken, the annual conversation not really being helpful to the way teams work nowadays. And that's because of a few reasons, one of which takes a ton of time to put together. And as a result of that, we're not really able to get all the information out and conveyed to team members to help them learn to grow and improve, which should really be why we do reviews rather than a checking the box exercise, more of a conversation about how can we work together for growth. This very much is a recency biased laden process. And so everything WorkStory centers around is let's just make it a continuous and ongoing process built around the collection of feedback. So for your team, you may choose to use Slack, Microsoft Teams, email, whichever channel makes the most sense for the individual team members taking part. I'm going to demonstrate today using Slack. So theoretically, I've got some relationships set up in WorkStory that allow me to give feedback to certain team members of mine, whether they be on my team or people who work underneath me within the organization. I've got a message here asking me to provide input on Jamie, who's one of my direct reports. WorkStory is looking at Jamie's role and determining which areas of performance need more input. So it sent me a question here. How effective do I think she is at fostering a productive work environment? It happens to be a multiple choice question, so I'll give a quick response, meets expectations. She does not know how I'm rating her in any way in that sense. And then here's an opportunity for me to provide some constructive feedback. So I'll share something quickly. Okay, now that I've shared some feedback, I have my choice of how visible I want this information to be. Your team can actually pick and choose of these visibilities, but it's essentially a spectrum of, yeah, I feel comfortable sharing it directly with them and they know it's coming from me and we can talk about it, to, no, I'd rather just share it with their manager only, to maybe just anonymous sharing. Whatever is most comfortable for you and your team's culture. Here I'm going to share it openly. I don't mind Jamie seeing this, and again, we can discuss it if needed. I'll click submit. That's my feedback done. In our case and our rules, I won't give Jamie feedback again for another 2 or 3 weeks. If I feel inclined to, in between those requests, I can always just go give feedback using / commands, or I can always request feedback from my team members. But for the most part, we recognize that you're busy and you're not going to think about necessarily going and documenting feedback. So that's why our automated prompting exists, to help pull that information out of you throughout the year. As a result of me sharing that, we now have access to all sorts of great analytics. So we're going to hop into the platform now to take a look. Okay, we're here in WorkStory. I'm going to take a look just very briefly at a couple different dashboards. First, we'll look at Jamie's dashboard here. We can see, first and foremost, the feedback feed, all the great information coming in from me and or other team members throughout the year. I can also just share or document things that are going on directly within the platform. On the right-hand side, we have a performance summary. This is generated by us automatically once a month, just to help team members, managers get a sense of what's happening and highlighting some insights that we think would be worthy of bringing to a one-on-one discussion. Next, we have analytics. This differs based on if you're the manager or the team member. You might have slightly more insights as a manager into the actual numeric values that are here to help you tell a better story, more granular story of what's happening. I have an overall perspective on her performance. I also have the breakdown of each of her competencies that relate to her role. And I can also see how she compares not only to herself in previous periods to see if she's improving, but I can compare her also to other team members who have similar competencies. Again, from Jamie's perspective, if we don't necessarily want to share all of this information, we can actually limit what she has access to, and she can come and see, at least from a qualitative point of view, am I meeting or exceeding different areas for my role. Next, we have goals. If your team wants to take advantage of goals, you can add goals to the system. Team members can add goals for themselves. They function in the same way that feedback does. You set how often you want team members to provide input on their goals, and they'll get prompted to provide that input directly in their channel of choice. Next, we'll look at a team dashboard quickly. Managers and admins have access to this. This is just a higher level perspective on the group and how things are going. You can see overall metrics for your team, break down different groups or departments or geographies within your organization. You also have team member rankings to hopefully provide better insight into overall performance over a longer term perspective. You also have insight into participation, which is key, especially when it comes to seeing how well people are giving feedback to one another. So we do a lot of sentiment analysis and all the feedback coming in, and we'll actually give you a ranking of how well team members are giving feedback to one another so that you can quickly see, okay, Jack in this case is being a little too positive. We need to help him be a little bit more constructive. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, we have Adrian, who's being perhaps a little too negative, a little too constructive. How can we coach him up as well? Okay, and then we get to performance reviews. When we want to put reviews together, we'll initiate a review cycle. This is an entirely customizable aspect of the system. You can create reviews based on all the WorkStory data that's been collected. You can also just create reviews that are more traditional, just based on whatever competencies you think are appropriate. So I'll create one here quickly. Just the date period of the information we're looking at. And if I want to create different types of reviews for different departments or individuals, or maybe probationary reviews for our newest team members, we can construct those and then save them as templates to be pulled in later. Another part of setup is determining what type of reviews we want to be doing. Do we want manager and self, more of a 360 approach? Some other settings here include our use of AI. Do we want to allow users to pull in AI summaries or generate them automatically in an effort to save time? Do we want calibration steps? Do we want to require an employee signature? You can also choose to include goals if your team takes advantage of those. You can include additional questions. These are just supplemental questions that help you get at some of the information. So do you want to rate this person's potential? You can ask that of the manager. Do you want to have the team member list their accomplishments from the year? Whatever's most effective at helping to measure this person's performance. You can include a summary section. And then the last part of setup is actually setting deadlines. This is really great, especially for HR or people teams in an effort to help them not have to follow up with people constantly. The system will basically dynamically look at who has and who has not completed various steps of the process at this time. And if they haven't, it'll reach out to them via Slack or Teams or email to help remind them and invite them in to complete things. I'm going to take a look right now at a review in progress just to show you guys a little bit of how it works. Basically, instead of your standard sit down, go rate someone 1 to 5 and try to find or come up with things to justify that rating, instead your process should be really much more of a 15-minute exercise of just checking your work because you've already done the effort of sharing feedback throughout the year. So I can just flow through the various competencies. In this case, we have working with others competency, all the feedback from throughout the year, AI generated suggestions of things to talk about or items to focus on. I have the WorkStory recommended rating for how to evaluate this person. If I don't necessarily agree with it, I can override it with a different choice. And then if I need to, I can pull in some of those previous feedback comments to share as part of the conversation. So that's the general flow. Competency by competency. Again, you've already done a lot of the work throughout the year. The team member has seen a lot of this feedback already, so none of it should really be a surprise. This is really just more of an opportunity for us to plant a flag and have a really good, effective conversation. As you can see here, we've included goals in this review. You can see all the goal updates and provide your commentary as well. Some additional questions to be answered by the manager or the team member that you can customize as you saw earlier, and then a summary section, which allows you to provide overarching comments for this team member. And then once you're done, you can submit the review, and it automatically kicks it off into the next step of the process. The next person involved would be notified that they're ready to go. So that's a quick look through at the WorkStory process. Basically, continuous feedback over the course of the whole year gives you a much larger and wider perspective, hopefully from the input of many different people as well, so that you're not providing such a biased conversation, one that's not based on one person's opinion at one point in time throughout the year, but rather reflects on the entirety of that employee's contributions. And because of that, you have access to all these different types of analytics to help tell the story throughout the year and make different types of personnel decisions. And then really what you're trying to get at is compounding that team member's growth over time. So not only will they grow and become a better version of themselves in their roles, but your organization will benefit from their growth. Anyway, thanks again for hanging out with me for this quick look at WorkStory. And if you're interested in seeing more or trying things out for yourselves, just let us know. We'll be happy to get you set up. Thanks so much.